Hey folks, this is Ethan. If you've found value from listening to this podcast and you'd like to support us, you could go to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and leave us a review. Leaving us a review helps other people find the show. Whatever you can do to help support us, we do appreciate it.
Hey, son.
Yes?
Do you trust me?
Yeah. I trust you.
You trust me a lot, right?
Yeah, I trust you. I'm trusting you're not going to try to kill me in my sleep.
No, I'd wait till you're awake.
Okay, I trust that you're not going to lie to me for your own gains.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Trust me to be a reasonably good father.
I trust you to be a very good father.
Okay. You trust
I especially trust you to be trying your hardest to be the best father you can be.
That's nice. And in business, as far as, running the company and being straight with you and treating you well, you trust me in those ways too?
I absolutely trust you in those ways. Yes, that's without a doubt.
That feels really good. So you trust me to always remember all the things you tell me to remember, and you trust me to always follow through on the things that I said I was going to do. Let's just go on from there.
Absolutely don't always trust you in those regards.
Well, then do you trust me or you don't trust me, dude?
I trust you,
okay.
But sometimes I don't trust you on the little things. This sounds like a stupid question.
Probably is, because, go ahead. Skilled managers equals high morale, which equals all that cool stuff that you cannot pay for and you can't punish for.
When you close off that feedback channel, you are not going to be able to hear the truth.
In the first microseconds, your brain can't tell the difference between physical danger and what we call social danger.
I'm pissed off at you.
Me specifically?
Well, just because you're my boss and all.
Employees tend to get promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. Go forward and don't suck.
All right, folks, we are live from the studio. This won't be by the time it hits your ears for you.
So it's not live, dude.
It's not live, but it's live for me and you right now at the time that we are talking.
You and I, it's live for us.
Exactly.
Gotcha. That was not confusing at all.
But we are back in the studio in Seattle, Washington on a nice, rainy, quintessential Seattle day.
Yes.
Welcome to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast.
I'm Michael Nash.
He's Mike Nash. I'm Ethan Nash.
There you go.
We are your hosts, and we are excited to be with you for the next 40 minutes or so. Mike, Dad.
Yes, son, Ethan.
What is all this trust stuff that you're coming at me with at the beginning of this show? Where are you going with this?
It's the idea that trust it's a word that's being asked to carry way too much meaning, right? When you say you trust somebody or I don't trust you, it can mean so many things. Your mom, my wife, Christy.
I remember her.
Yeah. She trusts me. She trusts me in the big ways. We both trust each other in the big ways. Faithfulness and kindness and, she trusts me to be a good dad. I trust her to be a great mom. But there's a lot of other areas that we don't really trust each other. She doesn't trust me to remember avocados because I don't write stuff down. And I just think I'm going to remember. And I don't trust her to be on time because that's not her thing. And so when she says I'll be there at this time, I just know it's probably not going to happen. And that's also trust. And so the word trust, it means too much. It gets thrown around a lot. And I guess the reason we're talking about this today is because we're going to be talking about reliability. We're going to talk about dependability in the workplace. And it's the area where trust gets broken really easily.
Okay. So it sounds to me like you're describing two different kinds of trust.
Yep.
Right? And I've heard you describe this before as uppercase T trust, right? Big T trust, which is those things that you were talking about. You trust that, or I trust that you're going to be looking out for my best interests. Mm-hmm. I trust that you're going to be a good father. I trust that you are going to be a good husband to my mother.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the other kind of trust, which we call the lowercase t trust, little t trust. And that's the small thing. I don't always trust that you are going to respond to an email immediately.
Right.
I don't always trust that you're going to remember to follow up when I ask you to follow up on something, right? Or, and so those are the two different kinds of trust we're talking about here.
Right. That's exactly right. And the reason that matters is because we use the word without really differentiating which one we're talking about. And in the workplace, I guess here's the principle, lowercase t, right? My boss, it doesn't follow through all the time, or says that he's going to get something to me, but maybe doesn't. Or my employee says they're going to get a report done by, or just that they're going to get a report done, but they don't get it done. So now I don't trust them. Here's the thing. A lot of violations of lowercase t trust over time really can start to feel like uppercase T trust. And that happens in the workplace more than in personal relationships, actually. It's in the workplace where this happens. So for example, I trust my boss. I start out with trust in the sense that, he has shown or she has shown that she has my back. She has shown that she has my best interest at heart. She has shown that she'll advocate for me. She's doing a pretty good job of being my manager. And I know she cares about me as a human, not just as a cog in the system. I trust her. But over time, I start to get into that, I roll my eyes now when she says she's going to get something back to me because she doesn't. Or she says she's going to follow up with me on something and it completely falls off her radar and she doesn't do it. I can handle that a few times. We're all human and I give her grace. But if that starts to become a habit, I don't even notice it when my lowercase t starts to turn into the uppercase T.
Okay. So if I'm tracking this, you're saying enough violations on those lowercase t trusts, those little things, or what we perceive as little violations of trust, not following up, forgetting to call, whatever it may be, will eventually evolve into you, uppercase T, not trusting that person to their core.
Yeah, and you wouldn't necessarily say it that way, but you act as if that's true. So for example, I've heard employees say to me, I don't trust her. I don't trust my boss.
Hey, that was confidential.
Sorry, I'm not revealing any confidences here, but I've heard this. Right? I don't trust my boss, and when I dig into that, it so often boils down to these lowercase t things. It's not that they don't trust the person's integrity. It's not that they think they're a liar. It's not any of the big stuff, but it's the little stuff. But it still gets translated as I don't trust this person. And once I start saying that about someone, right? I don't trust that person. It takes on a life of its own, and it starts to grow and it starts to extend to other things.
So when it's a manager or an employee or peer to peer, when people are not following through on their commitments, you said this earlier, that's where we start seeing trust erode.
Yes, and there's what we're going to be talking about today is a pretty simple a tool in a sense that's going to help us avoid that. Because here's the bottom line. I want to give you a little scenario, Ethan. So if I said to you, Ethan, hey, would you send out these 3 emails that I'd like you to send out, right? And you say yes. Let's try it. Hey, Ethan, would you send out these emails?
Yes.
All right. Now ask me when I need it by.
When do you need me to send these emails by?
You know what? Whenever you get to it.
You got it.
Now, where is that going to end up on your to-do list?
At the very bottom.
Right.
In fact, it might not even make it on my list.
That's exactly right. Now, here's what happens. I'm not aware of that dynamic. I've asked you to do it. You said yes. And now it's some arbitrary time later, 4 days from now, I check in with you. Hey, did you send out those emails? And you say,
no, it's further down on the list.
And I now have a little bit of a trust issue with you. Do you see how unfair that is, though?
Yeah.
I'm having some trust issues now because you said you do it. I'm waiting for it to happen, but it's on my own sort of imaginary time frame that you don't know anything about.
Right.
Not imaginary, invisible time frame. You don't do it, and now, you didn't follow through, Ethan. You're not very responsible. You're not very dependable. And if that happens enough times, I'm going to have trust issues with you, but that's my fault.
Right. And most of the time when this is happening, you're not even realizing that you're causing, its own pain to yourself because you're not giving what we are calling a buy or a win.
It's a buy-win. Yep.
Buy-win.
Buy-wins is what we're talking about today.
And then, of course, probably goes without saying, but if there's low level of follow-through, and that means there's going to be low level of trust, and that's when you really just start seeing teams kind of fall apart.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, it is like you said, it's a team thing. It's also, it's me and my boss. It's me and my employees. It's me and my coworkers. This lack of by when, the use of by whens, which is usually, it's really just a way of talking about time commitments and committed to timeframes.
Right.
The lack of that it's such a small thing in a sense. It's not a very sexy topic, but in the long
it's
run,
real sexy.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
you think that's sexy?
Real sexy.
Okay, well, so your threshold for what's sexy. I
love reliability.
Okay, that's good to hear. Let's not talk about what's sexy on air. I just think that the absence of this practice, which we're going to talk about here today, we're going to basically talk about 6 different steps or 6 different aspects of how to use by wins. The absence of that can create this sense of not being able to depend on people, which, like you said, turns into a trust issue, and that turns into a relationship issue. And it becomes way bigger than it ever had to be because, again, the lowercase t turned into an uppercase t because of the lack of some pretty simple practices.
Right. And I think once you have this just pretty simple concept of giving by wins, and we're going to get into it, you can start to see why in the past things didn't get followed through like you thought they should have been. We actually have an example within our own organization where one of our colleagues, we wanted
Melissa.
Okay,
Melissa, if you're listening, we love you,
and we're sorry about this.
We're sorry. This was not.
Well, he's
your
sorry.
fault.
I did do it.
This was not
no
your
responsibility or ownership on my part for this at all.
Melissa, we love you, Melissa.
Anyways, Melissa, our terrific administrative specialist. You had asked her, well, I'll say we can say we here.
It was me.
Okay, you had asked her to send out an email to the client, all our clients, essentially asking them to have a document prepared when we come in to do our trainings. You put that on her plate. I don't know what you said. You said, hey, take care of this. A couple weeks later or something, maybe even a week later, we found out that email never even went out. And we were like, why did this not happen? This was important. Well, turns out that when you have a million things going on like Melissa does, she does so much for us, and we're very thankful for her, and for us. Let
me pick up the thread because that's exactly what happened. Hey, Melissa, would you send this email out to these clients? I don't even think I said, before any trainings. I just said, would you send this email out to clients and ask them to have these documents? I end up going to the training and those documents aren't there. And I found out that she never sent the email. I go back and check and look at my email to her. It was so not clear. And there was nothing even close to a time frame on there. I didn't give her any deadline. And she is super reliable. Like, I can't think of anything she's not done that we've asked her to do. Right. And if we give her a time frame, she's right on it. But just like I said, I didn't give her a time frame. So it probably dropped to her 4th or 5th thing. She didn't get to it. And then for a moment there, Melissa, I apologize. I repent. This is not good. But I was a little bit mad at you, Melissa, for about, 15 minutes. I thought, well, she didn't do this until I went to my email and realized, oh, she didn't do it because I didn't tell her when it needed to be done.
Right. And this can happen so easy with all of us. We all, again, have a billion things on our to-do list. So if there's no buy win, like you said, it's probably going to make its way to the bottom of the list. So let's get into this. Let's talk about how this works with this buy wins.
Yeah, and this isn't something we made up. I want to point this out. This is, again, not a super exciting topic. It's not something that we're just making up. This is, I remember 15 years ago, Boeing went through a phase where they were making their directors and managers wear, and this is kind of silly, but these little pins that said, ask me for a buy win. They were trying to embed this in the culture because this is actually a thing that organizations work on. This is something that can actually ease a lot of the pain of missed deadlines and trust issues, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about we're going to talk about 6 steps. So if you're writing stuff down or whatever, it's going to be 6 different steps. The first step, which sounds really obvious, but it has some nuances to it, is just give a buy win whenever you give a task or an assignment. Always give a buy win.
Okay, so do you mean literally, does everything require a buy win? Are there any exceptions there?
There's a few exceptions like, oh my gosh, something just came up. I'm not going to be able to meet with the client that I have to meet with this afternoon. Would you please cancel that for me?
Right.
Well, that's pretty obvious that I need you to do that before the appointment starts.
Sure.
Right. So there's some obvious things like that. Well, and one more thing. Then there's also things that I really don't care when you get to.
Right.
I literally don't care. It's like some project. It really is a whenever you get to it.
Right. This should get done eventually.
Right. But I'm not going to be tracking it. I'm not going to be, no one's in trouble if, 6 months from now it's not done.
Right. So what you're saying is as a manager, if there are projects, tasks that you need people to get done, and you know that there is a cutoff of when you need that, you have to give a buy-win.
Yeah. And actually, I'm almost rethinking what I just said. If I'm the employee, I need to know how to categorize it. I need to know how to prioritize it. So if you're not giving me buy-win, it leaves me in the dark.
Sure.
So I would rather you say to me, hey, this thing I'm giving you right now is not a priority. If and when you get free time, would you please work on it? Now, there's not going to be very many of those because, well, if you need it, you need to let me know that, I need this by the end of the year. I need this by next spring. I think a buy-win is actually super helpful.
Yeah. And I think we totally agree on if you know there's going to be a deadline to this or it's an important task to get, you have to give a buy-win if you expect it to have some sort of priority. I also can see that depending on the employee and where they're at with you, there is probably some level of autonomy as well with tasks to be able to give them, right? To not give them a deadline for every single task that you put on their plate, right? So they have some autonomy.
I think there's a better way to get autonomy because I'm actually finding in the workplace it's confusing not to establish a buy-win. I don't think it helps an employee to say, you know what, I'm not going to give you a buy-win on this. Just do it whenever you want to do it.
Sure.
That actually makes it harder for the employee. Now, here's where the autonomy comes in. These are the nuances of my first point. The first point, of course, again, is give a buy-win, right? Well, here's the nuances. Negotiate the buy-win, meaning you could either, as the person giving the buy-win, you could actually start with negotiation, right? Hey, when can you get this to me? Let's you and I establish a buy-win together right here. So there's some autonomy right there. I'm asking the employee to actually use their best judgment and that what they know about what's on their plate.
Okay.
Let's together negotiate this buy-win.
Good. So it's a partnership of figuring out, hey, let's look at what you have to do. Let's look at what I have to get accomplished. Let's figure out when this task can get done as, a unit here.
Yeah. And here's another step. Let's say I don't start with negotiation as your manager. I just say to you, hey, Ethan, I'd like you to get this thing done, this X, Y, and Z thing done by next Tuesday. I need you to have permission, and hopefully we have a safe enough relationship. I need you to look at that buy-win and think to yourself, is that going to work for me? Right. Is that reasonable? If I was to get that done by next Tuesday, maybe there's something that's going to have to fall off your plate. That would not be good.
Right.
Or maybe you're going to have to work all day Sunday, which isn't really what I expected. So I need you to negotiate. I need us to have a safe enough work relationship where I can give a buy-win to you, and then you can negotiate it with me until we arrive at one that works for both of us. Because what I don't want is, you to say yes to something that you can't follow through on,
right?
Because that's going to lead to a trust issue for us. Or you to say yes to something that's now going to cost you in some way that I didn't know. And I don't want that to happen to you. Because I don't want you saying yes and then getting all burnt out all weekend and then me find that out later because I'm like, oh, dude, if you would have just negotiated with me on this, you didn't need to do it over the weekend.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So that's where the autonomy lies, is in you two figuring out what is a timeline that's going to work best for the both of you.
Yes.
And as we said at the beginning, couple notes here. ASAP is not a buy-win.
ASAP is not a buy-win. Yeah.
ASAP as soon as possible. Probably not going to happen still.
No, or I'm going to go ahead and ASAP it, and something else is going to fall off my plate that wasn't necessary. And so, I actually there's one organization in particular we're working with now. They've outlawed ASAP. They've just said let's not use that anymore. It's vague.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of a kind of a power differential thing sometimes. Like I'm running around saying ASAP because I think everything I give you is super important.
Not everything needs to be done as soon as possible.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And we have different definitions of ASAP.
Okay.
Now one more thing on this point. If I don't give you a buy-win, don't walk away from this conversation without asking for one.
Mm-hmm. Right. Ask for one if you don't get one. So this falls on everybody's shoulders, right? Yep. Managers may forget, or Actually, here, so does this also apply to peer levels? Right, you're working in on a team, on a project. I would imagine this applies across the board.
This should go. It's actually one of our points. In fact, let's make this our second point. Buy wins apply in all three directions. Meaning, I need to establish a buy win with my employee. He and I, or she and I, need to work on this together and negotiate it out, or she needs to ask. We need to make sure we don't leave the conversation without a buy win. It should also go up. Meaning, if you need something from me, I should give you the buy win, or we should establish the buy win together. So you know when to expect it from me. Right. And peer to peer. This is one of the reasons teams struggle, is because, that group over there was supposed to get something to us and they didn't do it.
I see. Yeah. This is just would you say this is just a huge system piece, right? If this is in everybody's, on everybody's radar and everybody knows that this needs to be established from all levels, that family, right? I say family as in a workplace is going to be a lot better off. They're going to be healthy. Things are going to get done. People will be more productive. Now, this buy-win piece, this is obviously about setting expectations with each other. I mean, that's clear. And this just reminds me of the Gallup Q12 study that they did. And we've referred to this in a couple other podcasts. Basically, they came up with 12 answers, and, positive answers to these 12 questions was directly correlated to companies with higher productivity, retention, customer satisfaction, morale, profitability, right? And the number one question is, do you know what is expected of you at work? Do you know what is expected of you at work? Now, buy wins is obviously not the full story with expectation here, but it certainly is a piece.
That's exactly right. So our first 2 points. Our first point, of course, is you get a buy win established somehow, right? Whether you give it, whether you ask for it, whether you negotiate it. And again, the manager can be the one that starts the negotiation. Hey, when can you get this to me? The second point is buy wins both work in all three directions. They work up, down, and sideways.
Just has to happen everywhere.
It has to happen. Point number 3, which is so obvious: meet your buy wins.
Right. Take them seriously.
Absolutely.
This is worth, I think, talking about kind of just a small cultural differences with deadlines with that. In Western culture, right, we tend to see time a little bit more as linear, limited in supply. So a failure to meet a deadline can be interpreted as having a poor work ethic or being incompetent, right? We're a very individualistic culture. Now, in other cultures, it's important to understand that, time is viewed a little bit differently. So more importance might be put on doing things right and maintaining harmony. Not to say that in Western culture, they don't care about doing things right? But there's more of an emphasis on that. Rather than worrying about getting things done on time. So an example I remember from a class I took of international communication, in India, sometimes in India, deadlines can be viewed as, targets to be met but that's to be met in the context of other competing tasks and in the context of potential damages to relationships if you delay, right? So they're weighing out, okay, here's a target that I'm supposed to hit, but I have all these other targets I'm supposed to hit as well. And I got to think about what relationship would be damaged worse. So obviously, this applies outside of buy wins, right? So in Japan or East Asia, decisions are much more consensus based. So you send out an email expecting, a quick reply. You don't get a reply till days later. Well, they might be consulting with colleagues to figure out what the best collective right answer that would be. So, all I'm saying here is the bottom line here is do your homework and make sure to communicate in the context of that culture. Right? So if a culture puts more of importance on relationship, maybe explain the relationships that would be damaged if the deadline isn't met here. And that's why you're setting this hard buy win. So just something to keep in mind when we're working in a multicultural world here.
Yeah. And actually what that reminds me is I think that kind of can lead toward our fourth principle, right? We're right now we're on the principle of number 3, which is, meet your buy wins. And you're talking about sort of some nuances around that with different cultures. Yeah. I think that gets us to our next point is I kind of think regardless of the culture, if you're going to miss your buy win, communicate. And this is the thing that really, I think, trips people up. I mean, obviously, people are going to miss their buy wins. I mean, it's just life. It's, when we say meet your buy wins and take them seriously, we really mean that, right? I mean, that's personal accountability. If you've agreed on a buy win with someone else, it is your job to meet it.
So that's the expectation.
That's the expectation.
People need to know what buy wins mean.
Right. Yeah, this is it. So if you've established it, if you've agreed upon it, you guys have negotiated it, it's your buy win. Write it down, track it, put it on your to-do list. You have to take this seriously, because going back to trust, not meeting your buy win, especially if it becomes a bit of a pattern or a habit, it's going to hurt your trust relationship with that other person, no matter what. Right. So you can actually make up for those times that you're going to miss your buy wins by communicating about it ahead of time. Because that actually builds just as much trust, believe it or not, as actually making your buy win.
Absolutely. So if you're going to miss a buy win, you're talking about just renegotiating it ahead of the time when it was supposed to be due, rather than day it's supposed to be due. Sorry.
Yep. That's too late.
Gotcha.
That's too late to renegotiate it. I mean, obviously you still have to renegotiate at that moment, but you've missed your buy win. You've already crossed the trust line at that point. Yeah. But if I get ahead of it and say, this thing I was supposed to get to you by Friday, but I call you on Wednesday and say, dude, something's come up. I'm really sorry. This is going on. Can we move that out a bit? That actually feels pretty honoring to the other person.
Right. You're not going to lose trust in the same way. Actually, they did some really interesting research on extending deadlines at Harvard. They conducted a bunch of experiments. I think they used about 10,000 employees and managers in the U.S., so quite a few data points there. But they actually found across occupations, asking for more time on a work assignment was actually perceived positively by managers, right? It obviously reduced employee stress level and improved performance. Yep. So it's okay to ask, right? This right there won't, or at least shouldn't, lose you trust. And they also just found that with employees, they worried that asking for deadlines, extensions, their managers would think of them as incompetent and unmotivated. But obviously that is not true.
No, in fact, that reminds me, that's such a good, I'm glad you said this, because I've seen exactly what you just talked about in the workplace, where you have an employee, because of this power differential, and they don't want to be seen as incompetent. Yeah. So, I'm not going to make my buy win, but I'm going to look stupid, or I'm going to look incompetent if I go say something like that, if I go try to renegotiate. And then that leads to, again, poor work, right? Or missing it anyways, which now really makes you look incompetent, right? Or something else gets bumped off your plate, which hurts someone else. But here's what tends to happen. I'm going to let that person who has lower status suffer. Yeah. Like, I'm going to not get my colleague what he needs because I need to get my boss what she needs. Right. And then, or one more thing that could happen. I go ahead and meet everyone's needs, and I give myself no time for myself. I don't take care of myself. I'm not healthy. I work all night. Well,
you're stressed out. You're overwhelmed. You're in a low performance state.
Which means I'm going to end up probably not producing good work some other time because I'm getting burned out.
Yeah, it really is a domino effect there. So I would just say for managers, make sure your employees know it's okay to negotiate and ask for extensions, right? Yeah. Tell your employees who need more time that they're also not alone. That's a really good way to do it. They say, hey, I need more time for this. Hey, guess what? You're not the only one that has to ask for extensions. Maybe communicate that you yourself have to ask for extensions.
Yeah. In fact, I would say to them, you don't lose 1 point in my book for asking for an extension or a renegotiation at all. In fact, you get a couple points. Yeah. That actually makes me
literally what the research found.
That's exactly right. Where you lose points is when you don't get the thing done on time. Right. That's where you lose points.
Now, I also clarify probably when a deadline is urgent and cannot be renegotiated, because there are those situations, right? For instance, shoot, I just found out the FDA is going to be here on Friday. Right. I really need this report by 5 p.m. Thursday night. I'm sorry, this one cannot be renegotiated. They're here Friday.
Yeah, it's a hard stop.
Right? So, and that common sense kind of stuff.
It does, and that probably comes up in the establishing of the buy-win. It's kind of clear in most cases when the buy-win is not negotiable, and if it's not clear, it needs to be said. I think that's really good.
Okay, so if you're going to miss your buy-wins, renegotiate it ahead of time. This actually builds trust. Yep. All right.
So we're talking about 6 principles. The 4 we've just covered are kind of the body of it. That's the main thing, right? We've got, real quick, here's the 4 we've covered so far. Okay, so number one is always give a buy win, right? Always establish it, and that includes negotiate it. That includes ask for about it. Always walk away from the conversation with a buy win is the first principle. Second principle is that buy wins work in all three directions. It's up, down, and sideways. Mm-hmm. Next principle is meet your buy wins. Take them seriously, right? And then the fourth principle is if you're going to miss a buy win, get ahead of it. Okay. Communicate ahead of it. We could stop there really, because the other two are kind of add-ons and some little nuances, but those are the four right there that make this really work. And I'm going to take one more step further than what you said, Ethan. Yes, make sure that your employees know that it's okay. In fact, I prefer that you come and renegotiate. Tell them that. Teach your employees everything we've just said. Like sit down with your team and go through this. Yeah. This is super important. If your whole team understands these really simple concepts and decides to practice these together, you can save yourself so much grief.
Yeah, teach your employees as well as maybe to have this conversation with your manager
and your colleagues.
Yeah, with your colleagues. Hey, I need this in order to be an effective team here. Yep. So number 5 then. I know you said these aren't that important.
They're important, but they're not the body of it. But let's do the last two.
Let's do them anyhow. Why not? For kicks and giggles.
Follow up on the buy wins that you have actually given. This is kind of now just sort of a personal management issue, right? So if you and I, Ethan, have agreed that you're going to call the White House by whatever that date was, we said Friday, 5 p.m.
Next Friday, 5 p.m. You don't even remember the buy wins you give out.
That's my point, right? So let's say that we've agreed you're going to do this by next Friday at 5, and next Friday at 5 comes and goes, and the next week comes and goes, and it doesn't happen. You haven't done it, and I don't say anything. What have I just taught you?
That your buy wins are full of nothing but hot air.
Exactly. They mean nothing. Yeah. One of the phrases that we've talked about here already on in this show is what you allow, you teach. Yeah. Right. And so when I give a buy win or you and I establish one together and then you miss it and I never say anything about it, consciously or not, you're figuring out that my buy wins mean crap.
And it's probably consciously.
Probably.
It's probably like we talked about this buy win and
he's not going to follow through.
Didn't even mention it when I missed it.
Yeah. So in a way, believe it or not, even though you're the one that missed the buy win, like you're the one that should be in sort of hot water for that. You look at me as not very trustworthy.
Right.
Because I didn't even follow through on the buy win that I gave you. Uh-huh. So this fifth principle is track the buy wins that you have actually given or agreed upon with someone else. Like find a way to track it so that when that date comes up, you are now waiting for that thing. If it doesn't happen, you're going to check in.
Right. And the sixth principle?
The sixth one is sometimes hard to explain, but it's about being truthful about your buy wins. It's about not kind of being artificial or arbitrary. And this is a little hard to explain, but what it really means is, well, I'll tell a little bit of an embarrassing story about someone that I know very well.
Ooh, get your popcorn ready.
So I am married to this amazing, wonderful woman named Christy.
Yeah, I concur.
Yes, you've met her.
I've met her.
Yes, you've known her since you were really little. But as I might have mentioned, she isn't always timely when it comes to showing up on time or being ready. And so I found that out early on in our, probably in our dating relationship maybe, or at least early on in marriage. And so I, for a while, for about a year and a half or 2 years, if the flight left at 4:00, I would tell her that the flight was leaving at 3:00.
How dare you?
I did. And we're about 2.5 hours away from the airport. So it was a big deal for us. We missed a flight to Hawaii one time and it was kind of toasted me. And so I, for a while there, was telling her, and I was the one at that point that was doing the tickets and she does all that now. So, I couldn't do it if I tried, but you know what? It didn't take her long to figure that out because,
right.
How obvious is that? I wasn't thinking, And so what happens is she, for a while there, didn't trust me at all when it came to that kind of thing. And she would just add another hour because she figured I was probably, not telling the truth. And,
right.
And that's kind of a tortured way of explaining that we kind of get caught when we start to sort of buffer the buy wins because I don't think that person's going to meet the buy win. Uh-huh. So I start buffering it.
Right.
Well, then they figure out that I'm buffering it.
Yeah. And then they might buffer it themselves.
That's exactly
Which is
right.
literally what happened in this situation that you're describing. I remember this as a kid.
You do not.
Yes, I do. I remember this as a kid where basically then mom would start saying, if we needed to like be somewhere at 8 or we needed to leave at 8, she would be like, all right, everybody, we're going to shoot to leave for 7 tomorrow. Because that means we'll probably leave at 8.
Right.
Which is frustrating. It's like, why don't I just know
Is it 7 or 8? I don't know now. Yeah.
So anyways, not to throw you under the bus there. But
thank you.
Look at what it's a system, family thinking.
Yeah, it's family systems, same thing as organizational systems. And so in the workplace, now this is not artificial by I'm not lying when I say to you, hey, Ethan, this report that I'm needing you to give me, I'm not going to be using it at the board meeting until 2 weeks from now, but I want it next week.
Right.
That's not artificial. I need it because I need it. I need to look at it. I need to edit it. You knowing you probably made a bunch of mistakes. I have to redo it for you. So I need it a week ahead of time.
Yeah. And just explain that. That's all. That's all
I got to do. Yeah.
Here's the buy when because of this situation. Yeah. Right. And I think this also just means be specific with your buy when as well, which I don't know if we talked about this, especially when it's further out. So instead of, hey, I need this by the end of the month.
Oh, yeah. Or by spring.
Right? It's like, hey, I need this end of the day on the 31st. Now there's no ambiguity around that.
That's exactly right. Now, this thing about being truthful, it's also about not being arbitrary, which is kind of a little bit of a different idea. And this might seem a little contradictory, but let's role play this again real quick. Hey, Ethan, I need a report from you on the X, Y, and Z client.
All right. When do you need it by?
Oh, you know what? Oh boy, it's so important. I need it by next Monday.
Next Monday?
Now, what if you go ahead and, accept that? And you comply. And
I comply.
And there it is. And you get it to me and you see it sitting there on my desk and right where you put it. And 3 weeks later, it's sitting in the exact same place with that, those lifesavers on top of it that haven't been moved. I've not touched this thing for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I just made up that by when.
Right.
And I didn't need it.
So that's how you lose trust.
There's another trust problem, right? Now, the next time I say, oh, it's really important, I need it by Monday, you're going to think, I don't think he really needs it by Monday.
Right. Or I might start questioning you. Right. Well, why do you need it by Monday? Which is okay thing to do. Question.
No, I don't want you questioning me.
Okay. Well, Jeez.
Not kidding.
This took a turn.
Yeah. So this last point is a little bit tricky, right? Like on one hand, don't lie about the buy when, like, oh, I need it when I don't really need it. On the other hand, you got to trust your, boss or whoever that when they say they need it, that they need it, even if they're not using it at the actual board meeting.
Right.
They need it because they need it for some other reason. That's okay. So it's just really about, I guess, all this wrap up to say on this last point, let's be authentic with each other. Let's just be truthful.
Yep. And use your calendars.
Yes.
That's important. That's how you remember buy wins, right? Because if you forgot as the manager when your buy win was, chances are they probably also didn't forget. So somebody's remembering and someone's losing trust there. Yeah.
In fact, if both of you are using your calendars and both being responsible, again, like we said earlier in the episode here, this isn't a sexy conversation. This isn't a great, super exciting adaptive skill topic around feedback or triangulation or any of the fun stuff we talk about. It's a really nuts and bolts thing though that can hurt the relationship or actually build trust.
Right. This is management.
That's that exactly.
Now, one quick question here before we wrap up. We're at about 40 minutes right now. So I had a colleague, I'm not naming any names, former colleague, who never missed a deadline.
Wow.
But they always asked for an extension. That's the catch, right? So where, as a manager, do we kind of have to draw the line with the people who seem to always agree on a deadline from the start and then always ask for extension? Is there a kind of a point where they've gone over the threshold of using that card?
Yeah, that could start to be a trust issue, I think. I wonder if that would be a case where you'd want to sit down with that person, not in any kind of, punitive way, and just do some adaptive skill building and say, hey, I'm noticing a pattern, and I think it'd be better for both of us if we could find a way to fix this. And so, is it about the deadlines themselves? Are they too tight? Is it about kind of how you're managing time? Mm-hmm. Can I help you with that? So I think that would be a really fair thing to sit down with that person and just try to find a solution to that.
Swell.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, we have a blog I want everybody to know that. If you don't like listening and you prefer using your eyes instead of your ears, go to our blog. It's on our website under the cool stuff. That's nashconsulting.com. We also have a monthly newsletter. We swear once a month. That's all it is. Full of management tips. No tricks, just tips. And you can sign up for that by going to our website or just text the word leading to 66866. Leading to 66866. It's all good stuff. I hope you love it.
And then we also would like to ask you again we'd love to address your questions. We'd love to address your topics. If you want us here in the what are we doing? Website? What is this?
This is a podcast.
If you would like us to talk about the thing you want us to talk about, please. And Ethan, how do they get that information to us?
Yeah, just shoot us an email at contact@nashconsulting.com. Contact@nashconsulting.com. Shoot us your question. Shoot us topics you'd like us to cover. This show is really for you all, for the listeners out there. So if what we're talking about just bores the hell out of you, tell us what to talk about then, all right? And stop complaining.
Yep.
We would love to know. All right, folks. Ta-ta.
Bye.